Good morning, Cedars Church family. Coming to you again with another word of encouragement to start your day. We've been following along with the story of the blind man in John chapter 9. And Jesus healed this man. He spit on the ground and made some mud and put it on his eyes. And he is now able to see. And the Pharisees are having a real hard time with this because Jesus did things differently than they did. They are uber religious, and they love their big prayers, and they love to show how pious and great that they are. And Jesus liked to hang out with sinners. He liked to hang out with the prostitutes and the tax collectors and people that other people didn't really like to hang out with. And in making mud to heal this man, he broke the Sabbath law twice. He first spit on the ground, and spitting on the ground furrows the ground, and you're guilty of plowing. And then with the mixing of the mud and the dirt and the spit, he's making mud, and he's working by doing that. So now he's guilty of working on the Sabbath. And so they bring this guy in, and they're trying to figure out, how exactly did he heal you? Why is this even okay that he healed you? Completely ignoring the fact that this guy can see. He was born blind, and now he can see. And so as they're questioning him in John chapter 9, they say, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" And he says, "I've told you already, and you didn't listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?" And they hurled insults at him. It's so interesting that these are supposed to be leaders in the church, and they're hurling insults at this man who's just been healed. All he did wrong was get healed. And they said, "You're his disciples. We're disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses. But as for this fellow, we don't even know where he came from." And the man answered, "Well, that's remarkable. You don't know where he comes from, but he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, to unbelievers. He listens to the godly person who does his will. Nobody has ever heard of opening the eyes of a man born blind. If he were not from God, he could do nothing." To this they replied, "You were steeped in sin at birth." The insults continue. "How dare you lecture us?" And they threw him out. I will never understand throwing somebody out of church who is only wanting to glorify God for his healing, for his goodness, for his grace. The problem here is these guys want to worship Moses, but Moses did miracles from God, parting the Red Sea, and there are dozens that read through Exodus and Leviticus and so on. So the power of God should not be lost on these men, and yet it's completely lost. It's completely lost because their minds are not in heaven. Their minds are not on God. Their minds are on earthly things, on their own personal power, on what they can control. And they don't like that there's someone who would break the Sabbath law, but honor God's law by healing a man. And this takes me to Colossians chapter 3, where Paul writes, he says, since you've been raised with Christ, have you ever thought about that? That you have been raised with Christ? That means you were dead, and Jesus died on the cross. And when he rose from the grave, Paul's saying, you rose with him. You were raised to life. You were dead, and you're now alive. That's huge if you haven't quite understood and acknowledged that. So you were dead, but you're now alive. And since you've been raised with Christ, seeing as that's the case, he says, set your hearts on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things above, not on earthly things. It's so easy for us to get caught up in the things of this world. It's so easy for us to get caught up with the virus and the quarantine, and are we being clean enough, or are we being subjected by our government, or is there a conspiracy, or should we be afraid, and all these different things. And at the end of the day, our minds need to be focused on Christ. where he's seated at the right hand of God. Our minds need to be focused on heavenly things. What would God have us do? He would say, I have a new command for you. I want you to love one another. As I have loved you, I want you to love one another. In fact, he says elsewhere that they will know that you are my followers because of your love. It's important for us to be a blessing to others. It's important for us to love other people, not to hurl insults at them, not to question their motives when we're seeing something, especially like a healing, when people are coming to Christ and coming to know him more fully, more intimately. Set your hearts, set your minds on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God, not on earthly things. Don't worry about the things that are around you. God's got your back. He'll protect you. He'll look after you. Don't worry what other people think of you, because it doesn't matter, because my heart is focused on him. Let your heart be focused on him too. Have yourselves a great day. God bless you. And remember, you are loved.